Faith 180. You take your faith and you turn it around. Faith 180. Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to Faith 180, the podcast where faith and mental health collide. I am one of your hosts, Tom Hamilton, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Jordan Hazelton.
Tom, can you come back to me? I'm Googling other words for large groups of people.
Okay, so while Jordan does some Googling for other groups of people, thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. We have a great episode lined up. And Jordan, did you find a word for a big group of people?
You know I did.
Let's hear it, buddy.
Do you want me to say it?
Yes.
Hello, multitude.
Multitude. That's a new one. I love how you're making it a point to find a new word for a giant group of people every single time.
Well, as we all know, a multitude is a great number of persons or creatures massed together.
Is that on dictionary.com?
Yeah.
I figured.
So
it's been a little while since I've talked to you, buddy. How you doing?
Things are going. Life is good. What have I done? Just work. Really work. And then obviously, we just had the event at the church, so that took up some of the time. But you know what? It was a phenomenal event. We spent time with an incredible crowd. We watched The Blind. And, we neither of us saw the movie going into it, so it's certainly going to be interesting to kind of get Tom's perspective as well as mine. What's going on in your life, Tom? Anything new?
Not much at all. Just a whole lot of work, a whole lot of extracurricular activities. You know, the boys in hockey, which I think I mentioned last time, which has taken up a lot. Doing some stuff at the church, the youth groups, and whatnot. But yeah, so going back to The Blind, the one thing that I do want to mention, I know we had put Faith 180 Presents, but I really got to give credit to Jordan. He's the one who did all the legwork
you're gonna make me blush, Tom.
I know, right? I'm sorry, but you're the one, you texted me one day, you're like, we're doing a movie night, this is the movie, and I'm like, okay, let's go for it. It really was Jordan who put in a lot of the legwork, and I just kind of jumped on and helped along the way, so...
You know, I just wanted there to be a spot for people who wanted to see that film to see it. And maybe somebody showed up that has never heard the salvation message and maybe it's changed their life. So that's what the goal was. And, we're never going to know, but God has his hand in this. I truly believe that. And that's why I think it was such a good evening.
I'm hoping that somebody who was like a Phil Robertson fan and not necessarily someone who was a Christian came and watched it and maybe took something out of it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Just quickly, I do want to thank our sponsors for that night again. Pleasant Supplies, you guys rock. We really appreciate it. Roymar Builders, that is my old man. Thank you, Papa Roy. And obviously the rest of the team at Roymar Builders. And then another shout out to Reg and Daniel over at Yarmouth Mazda and the entire team there. This movie night did come with expenses, and they helped us cover those. So thank you guys so much. And if you want to sponsor this podcast, we do touch tens and hundreds of lives, probably monthly. So, $10, $20, right, Tom?
Exactly.
For $10 a day, you can sponsor a Hazelton.
That would be Jordan Hazelton. That's right. So speaking of the people who are listening, just want to say again, thank you. This podcast does continue to grow week over week, which is still wild to me. Our Spotify impressions just keep going up, our followers, our interactions. But one thing that really does help us out is sharing this. Not only sharing, but liking, leaving a review. That's what really starts pushing it up through all of the channels to make sure that it is recommended to more people. So, if you could take 2 seconds to interact with this on wherever you're listening, that would be greatly appreciated as well.
If you really like us, you'll share with your entire friends list. In my opinion.
Now you're just guilting them, Jordan.
Oh man. No, if you feel inclined, if there's something, something that you think relates, or somebody else is going through something that you hear on the podcast, certainly share it with them. We're hoping to just spread the word that Jesus saves.
Jesus does save. So just to segue into the next segment, Jordan, it's Fun Fact Friday.
It's Fun Fact Friday.
Ba-dum-bum.
Do the ba-dum-bum. Oh, you just did. Okay. Welcome to another Fun Fact Friday with me, Jordan. And this is another good fun Bible fact. I can tell you that. Tom, do you know what the English word for good book is?
I would assume, and I don't want to say this as any sort of spoiler, but I'm going to assume it has something to do with the Bible.
See, was a trick question. I'm just kidding. The good book. So the English word for the good book is Bible, which is derived from the Latin word biblia, or the Greek word biblos. According to the Encyclopedia of Britannica, because Canonica was not available, biblos traces to the Phoenician port city of Gabal. And if I butchered Gabal and it's Jabal, I apologize to anybody in the Phoenician port city of it. The Greeks call Gabal Byblos. Well, that's interesting. And wouldn't you know it, Tom, one of the oldest cities in the world, Byblos, was a hub for papyrus. And what is papyrus, Tom?
Papyrus is a thick paper used by ancients for writing, Jordan.
That is correct, Tom. And the Greek name for papyrus was?
Byblos.
Which linked the city to the modern world.
Jordan, that was a fun fact.
Do you feel learnt?
I feel right learnt.
Tom's all good and learned now.
I'm all good and learnt. I got my edumacation here on Faith 180.
That is correct.
So going from Fun Fact Friday, Jordan, we have a guest with us here this evening.
We do, and this is a guest that I've been excited to have a conversation with since we both met this individual. This individual is in a course that Tom and I are taking, and no, it's not on professional podcasting. Don't be fooled. But this individual has a story, and I think that we should share with everybody. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Lyndsey to the podcast. Welcome, Lyndsey.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on with us. How are you doing? How are things in your world? Anything exciting that you want to share with the multitude that we speak with?
Such a big word, such a large word. I am in a very busy season of life, so I'm kind of all over the place, from volunteering, school, going to hockey, here, there, and everywhere, and even maybe saving a dolphin today.
Yeah, Jordan had mentioned that you were out saving dolphins, and I was like, how does one get involved in that gig? And maybe we will touch on that throughout this podcast. Yeah.
You have to be able to speak dolphin, Tom.
Fair enough.
That's right.
Fair enough.
I did want Lyndsey to actually just touch on that. I think what they're doing with Mars is really cool. So, yeah, if you don't mind, just tell us, a little bit about Mars and what's going on there.
I am definitely not qualified to speak on behalf of Mars. That would be definitely more my husband would be able to go there. But yeah, I signed up to be a volunteer with Mars a few years ago because, I mean, who doesn't love saving dolphins and whales? Yep. It's kind of always like a childhood. You watch the movies and you want to go save a dolphin. Mm-hmm. And it's also a very important message to teach kids we're all here on the earth, so try not to pollute the oceans and take care of everything.
Let's preserve God's creation to the best of our ability. He left it here for us to take care of, so let's do that. I just think it's very inspiring that you volunteer with that. For those that are listening that don't know, Mars is the Marine Animal Rescue Society. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want more information on them, just Google them up. But that's really cool that you're doing that, Lyndsey.
So before we get into the bulk of our time here together. First of all, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to sit down with us tonight. I mean, it is 10 o'clock in the evening, so it is late and we do appreciate it. But the one thing I want to say before we start is a couple weeks ago, I was late showing up to the local church leadership program, and you had lightly shared a bit of your story. So I did miss it, but as I was driving in, Jordan texts me. He goes, "We need to have her. We need to have her on here." So here we are. We're doing it. Just to jump right in. So the one thing that we ask the majority of people when they come on, and I think it's a good starting point question, is what was your relationship like with Jesus growing up, and was there one?
Yeah, I think growing up, I knew who Jesus was. I believed in him. I had conversations with him, but there was a really big disconnect that I grew up in Wedgefort, and I grew up speaking English, and my father was French, and Wedgefort had a French Catholic church that we went to, not every day, not every Sunday, but for holidays, special events, funerals, baptisms, everything else. So yeah, it's really hard to get a relationship with Jesus if you're not in the same language.
So that's an interesting thing that I didn't even know. So predominantly the services were all in French, obviously?
Yep, the priest would speak in French. I wouldn't have a clue what was happening. I basically just went because that's what I was supposed to do. So there was a really big barrier between, even if there was a relationship between me and Jesus, there was just so many walls that I really couldn't learn more.
So again, like it wasn't necessarily being angry with Jesus. It was just a language barrier.
Yep. And it wasn't in my house. Like my parents they believed in him too, but it wasn't everyday practices that we did. We didn't pray at suppers. We didn't talk about everything he's created and why we do this and why we do that.
I think that's a very...
That's unique. That's a unique perspective, really, if we're being honest.
It's unique, but I guess what I was going to get at is it's kind of, we hear that story somewhat a lot. I know that I grew up in church and kind of was unaware of what was going on. Now, there wasn't a language barrier. I could understand the pastor. That doesn't necessarily mean that I knew what a relationship with Jesus was. So, certainly unique in terms of the language barrier. That's
you say you understood the pastor. I mean, he was speaking your language. Did you understand what he was saying? You heard him, but did you understand it?
Who, me?
Yeah, just in general.
No, that's what I mean. I could understand it, but I had no clue what
You still didn't.
He didn't process. Yeah.
No, and I you know what? I think it's just I don't know. I just know so many people that kind of went through and experienced the same thing that I did, and I think you did, Tom, and that was just kind of a passive knowledge of Christianity and a participation in some of the traditions, but not necessarily a deep understanding.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I wanted to be a godmother for my nephew. And in order to do that in the Catholic Church, you have to do your first communion and you have to go to courses. Thankfully, they did offer that in English because there was a few of us. And then we had to do confession and everything else. So I followed all those steps just basically to check the boxes off so that I could become a godmother, which was all the wrong reasons. But yeah.
So you had mentioned growing up that, even though it wasn't practiced, you still had a belief in Jesus and a belief in God. So moving up into your, teenage, high school, your university, your early adulthood, did your curiosity ever go deeper, and did you ever explore that, or was it just kind of the whole passive belief?
I did go to youth group. We had one at Plymouth School, and it was actually really fun. I loved it, loved all the songs. So I guess maybe that was probably junior high. High school, I did not have any relationship with him.
Same.
I struggled with who I really was in high school, and I just tried so hard to fit in with so many different groups to be likable, and I went the complete opposite direction of the path with Jesus. I went the other way.
So you would say you were seeking approval of obviously other people and kids in the school.
Yep.
And I think that was the same for me. High school, wow, those were confusing times.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time with youth group. Like I volunteer with the youth ministry at Yarmouth Wesleyan. And the one thing that I tell them all the time, I know being a teenager in 2023 is hard, but I also understand being a Christian teenager in 2023 is pretty much impossible. And I hear the stories of, how some of these people they want to be accepted and they're trying to find their friend groups. But I also tell them at the same time, like, don't give up your beliefs to be liked by somebody. Absolutely. And that's one thing that I really hope doesn't happen.
Yeah, I remember I went to a boarding school. So at age 14, I moved away from home. I remember like night 2 or 3, I was in 9th grade and I'm sitting in one of the seniors' dorm rooms and we're just chatting. I was on the hockey team and we're in a full-on creation versus evolution debate. And I'm like, what? I remember just not being prepared and being uncomfortable. And that kind of was the first, like, okay, and then obviously you start looking at worldly things and yeah, it's hard. Christianity's hard.
It is. It's very hard. And I think we can all three of us here admit that.
Obviously now me and Tom both know you in a season where you're obviously developing and continuing to work on your relationship with Jesus. And before we kind of start to tell the Faith 180 journey for you, is there anything you can look back on now that's like, oh, okay, yeah, that was God working, or he had his hand on that when I didn't know it? Because I can certainly do that, and I think Tom can as well. And we're just wondering if you have any signs or coincidences.
I don't. I actually thought long and hard about this question, and I think I do, but I can't pinpoint them. I mean, you mentioned that your father, actually, another plug for Roy Mar, he built our house. And looking back, the one reason when we built our house, we just wanted to make it a space where everybody can gather and just fill it full of laughter and love and be an open door meeting place for like everybody. And I think Roy got that. So maybe it's a coincidence because at the time I wasn't a Christian and he was. And I knew that he understood everything I was trying to tell him, that the reason I was building the house the way I was I just wanted people to gather. That's
so we were so part of Lyndsey's story involves obviously her house burning to the ground. We're going to get into that here very shortly. Through a roundabout way, I had just asked my brother-in-law at dinner one night, because he's from your area, if he knew who you were, and he said, "Oh, I think I worked on their house." And I went, "What?" And then he looked over at my father and he said the names, and Dad went, "Oh yeah, we did. We rebuilt their house." So me and Lyndsey did not know this until a few days ago. That part of her story involves my father helping her rebuild. So with that in mind, I'm going to stop talking for a little bit. I want you to talk about the events that led up to what we're calling Somebody's Faith 180. So where does that start for you? Tell us the story. We're here to listen.
Before, I just was living a life that it was okay, but there was dark moments, and I wouldn't say that I was really struggling, but there was just moments that could have been brighter. And back in 2018, December 12th, 2018, was our house fire. So that night we were at my daughter's first Christmas concert. So I was already at the school and I was standing in the lobby selling tickets on a hoverboard, and I got a call. And normally I don't ever hear my phone, but for some reason I heard it in that moment and I answered, and it was my husband that said, you have to come home right now. Somebody was driving by our house. The flames were out of the front window. Our house is on fire. You got to come home. So I was like, there's no possible way. We just left 10 minutes ago. Like, he just closed the door 10 minutes before and the house was perfectly intact. So I'm driving home and trying not to speed and race home, thinking that I could just, run in and save everything once I got there. And I pulled down our road and all the fire trucks were there and there was no saving the house. And it's a very overwhelming feeling knowing that everything you've worked for was just gone. I can still feel that exact emotion that I felt that night. And that was the start of what I would call where I changed my life. When I went home that night, I had only the clothes that I was wearing. And it's just a humbling feeling that I just can't even describe.
I reflect back on, I've done some work with my father and his company, and you never want to see anybody lose their home. Goodness, I've seen, kitchens burnt to a crisp and, homeowners just ecstatic that the rest of the house is still standing. But when you arrive at a total loss, you can sense devastation. You can sense people are lost. You really don't know the direction. I can't put emotions to that because I've never experienced it. I can just...
I always describe it as the word gutted, like just completely gutted. It just takes everything out of you. Yeah. Yeah.
It's certainly, it's hard to be hopeful in that moment, especially. So, yeah.
So in those moments of being gutted or even moments of despair, such as a total loss of a home, I'm going to have to think most people are going to go to the cliche and say, if there really is a God, why did he let this happen to me? With that in mind, how did you navigate that? How did you keep it together? And where did you find the strength to pick up and keep moving forward?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was in the day of or the day after or maybe even the day after. It was very hard for my husband and I to say that we needed help because we help others, but we have insurance and we have good family, but it was also right before Christmas and I didn't have any mental capacity to go shopping for the kids for Christmas, which I know that's not what it's all about, but you still want to give them things that they're comfortable with. So the community just stepped up. Unbelievable what they gave and what they did for us in that time of need was unbelievable. They donated clothes, they did a toy drive for the kids. They just went above and beyond, and it just humbled my heart so much because I look back before that moment and I look back and I think I was so selfish and I cared about wrong things and I just didn't want to let them down. Like I can never repay any of them for what they did for us, but if I can just reach one person, I guess that's how I'm going to thank them.
Usually I have lots to say, as most of our listeners are aware of, but just to hear that and, preface with we live in smaller rural Canada, but, traditionally families bind together and help other families. And to hear that was your experience is extremely powerful. One thing I want to know is at that point, that was in 2018?
Yeah.
At that point, were you in church at all, or what was your relationship like with Jesus?
My daughter was going to a Sunday school with a very close family friend. Other than that, we didn't attend. It was right after this that we started to attend Coastal.
What brought you there? I
Yeah,
guess.
that was going to be my question is what prompted you to start attending?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, the obvious occurred, but as me and Tom have both experienced, there has to be an inward shift for you to desire a relationship with God. And is that what happened?
That is, yeah, we went to church. We went to my daughter's Sunday school concert that following Sunday after our fire. And we were going because I wanted to keep as much routine with the kids as possible. So whatever we would normally do, even though we were doing a million other things and going through this, we tried to keep their routine as strict as possible.
I've heard that before, that a lot of people say during times of extreme upheaval that keeping the routine is important.
It's important for us to do too, because it's very easy that you can fall into just a dark hole where you just want to give up, but keep your same routine, keep going. So that's what we did. We went to the Sunday school concert. It was in the evening. And when we got there, a bunch of pastors, I honestly don't remember all of their names, but they all came and they literally put their hands on me and my husband, and the two kids, our kids were there too, and they prayed over us. And that was my first experience with prayer. I felt the Holy Spirit in that moment. I was overcome with emotions. And when we both left that night, we knew that something had changed in us.
So prior to that, normal was dropping your daughter off on Sunday?
She would get picked up by a very lovely lady.
And then that night at her concert, obviously the pastoral staff thought, the Lord was calling them to pray over you guys, obviously. I want to say that this past Sunday that just went by, I was leaving the church parking lot, and a friend who, lives quite a ways away now, jumped out of his car, ran over to me and said that, he felt the Lord was telling him to pray over me. And honestly, I've never experienced that. Super, super powerful.
It is.
He said, I don't know what I'm supposed to be praying for, but I just feel this urge and I'm inclined to come pray over you. Can I pray over you? And I said, sure. I mean, I can tell you something though. 2 years ago, I would have ran the other way.
Right.
That's right.
I had that happen with a coworker in the lunchroom one time, and it almost brought me to tears. I'm not going to lie to you. And it's just, wow. Like, this person is just feeling inclined to take time out of their day to pray for me. Like,
that's exactly how we felt. Like, we didn't ask them to pray. We didn't know them overly well, but their care for us, even though they didn't know us, it just taught me so much. In that moment, I was just like, these people care.
Yeah, I remember part of my Faith 180 was finally feeling a sense of like community, and not that like we all have the community, but I mean like a real sense of like, you know what, these are people I can walk in their house any day and they're going to put food on a plate and they're going to feed me, and they're not looking for what I've done. They're there to help me become somebody. And I think it's critical that we have open arms for everybody. Everybody has different situations, different stories, and I think we're all guilty of it, judging books by their cover. But when you find real community, all the covers look the same, and that's human.
When I came back to church for the first time, I went back, to the same church that I walked away from, And I remember walking through the door, I had like my hood up and I was kind of like not looking at anybody. And I was worried about being seen and worried that people were going to point their finger at me and be like, what are you doing here? But no, it was immediate acceptance and we're so happy you're here, and hugs, and hearing people literally say the words, we've missed you and we're glad you're here. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to just kind of hover on this for a moment because I think it's a very critical point in your story. You go to the concert, the pastoral staff, prays over you. Any conversation in the car on the way home, like what's something obviously has to be clicking, or what's going on that night or the following days. I'm just kind of trying to capture that moment because I think it's so critical to your story.
Yeah. I remember the car ride home. I remember saying, what happened? Like, what was that I felt? Like, why did they care about us so much that they all came over to us and they all just genuinely wanted us to know that we were not alone and that we did not have to go through it alone. And in the next few days that followed, there was just little things that I started to notice. And, somebody bought me my coffee through the drive-through, and that was,
here we go.
it started a whole new, like, the smallest things. I didn't need a big gift just that made my day. I was on my way to the insurance company, and
which nobody wants to
do. A lady bought my coffee.
That's incredible.
Insurance is one of those things that like you need it, but you never want to have to claim it.
That's right.
So this is incredible. I love doing this because like that's my experience too. But something I want to ask, like, because me and Tom shared this, Brooke, Keegan, is the moment where like you become willing to receive what God has for us. So I know for me, it was like I'd walk outside and the sun would be up and I'd just be giddy happy that the sun was up.
Oh, it's another day instead of, oh, it's another day.
Yeah. So it's like I woke up and I have a family, and it's like every little thing he has his hand on, and I just,
So obviously you guys started exploring that more and actually, attending coastal services, I assume?
Yep. I can't remember the exact date we started to go to coastal, but it was a little while after this car ride. But I think the biggest shift was the next step that we probably took before going to coastal was we moved our daughter from school to the Christian school on Cape Island. That was a very difficult decision. You're moving from public to private, and that has a lot of pros and cons. And it's one of the best decisions that we've ever made. But it also opened up a world of, Christian parenting that I did not know or study or have any clue what I was doing. And then coastal came after that.
So you started going to coastal, but you've got involved more than just attending.
Yeah, like right off the bat, I remember listening to Jason in a high school here in Barrington because we didn't have a home. So we bounced around a lot. We went from a high school to a Lions Hall, back and forth, COVID, and now we have our own place here. But he was preaching and he just kept drilling your time, talent, and treasures. Use your time, talent, and treasures. And I would go home and I'm like, we only have one life. And I have fear and anxiety. I hate public speaking. I was just not living to my fullest potential. And once I started to open up myself to faith, I realized that if I give everything to him, he will he will provide everything I need. And so, yeah, I just said yes. I have no idea why I said yes. I remember signing the little connection card, like, yes, sure, I'll be on worship. I didn't sing in front of anybody, not even my husband. So I just started saying yeah.
So you're on the worship team at Coastal,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm one of the worship leaders in Yarmouth. And anxiety, depression, suffer from both. No shame in that. I sought help and I got it. And life is a lot more. There's a lot more positive outlook when I was able to get my mental illness under control. And one of the parts of my story that I've never said from the stage, just because it's not that appetizing, but I would get sick at the thought of joining worship and getting up in front of people and being vulnerable. That would make me feel sick, and I can't explain it, but there hasn't been. Okay, there was one morning, it was Easter. I didn't get to eat my breakfast, so I didn't get to take my meds. Easter Sunday was me and Jesus, 100%. And but outside of that, like, I have no anxiety about getting up now. It doesn't exist.
Yep, same for me. It's still there, but I know why he's getting me to do
Right.
it, and I know that there's a bigger picture, so it goes away. It's a little easier to deal with.
Right, 100%. I think I'm the same way, because I make this joke amongst other members of the team, but I say, like, I get up and I do my thing, and if I mess up, it's Jesus' fault, because I put it all on him. So, but that's just kind of where it is for me. It's like I have to just accept that, what, he's in control anyway. I'm not in control. Mm-hmm. So you work the way you're going to work.
That's a good outlook to have, because unfortunately I'm not gifted with the ability to sing, but I guess people like hearing me talk because they keep getting me to host. And there are some mornings where it's like, oh man, like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I have something prepared. Sometimes I go up fully scripted. Other times it's like, I'm just going to wing it. And I'm so worried that I'm not going to say what I want to say, or I'm going to forget. And I actually did forget from stage one time. But yeah, it's all on Jesus. So, Lyndsey, we're just going to pivot back a little bit to a bit more of a difficult time for you. In this one here, when Jordan told me about this part of your story, it resonated with me personally, because I currently do work in a financial institution, and you unfortunately were the victim of a robbery. Yeah. So first of all, if you don't mind, if you want to tell everyone what happened, what the day started out like, what led up to it. But the one thing I'm curious about, and I kind of talked about it to you a little bit just in passing, I think it was last week, we go through annual training for robberies and what to do in the case of a robbery. And it's hammered in our heads biannually, sometimes quarterly. And I'm just curious, did that training come out and help you get through it? Or was it just kind of like, I forget everything, I'm just going to do what's coming naturally?
Yeah, so it was back in 2021, I think. I got up, I got ready just like I do every other day, and I went to gas up because after work I was, picking up the kids, taking them to skating or hockey or whatever, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and you don't think your day is going to erupt like that. But I got to work, and my morning routine was the exact same. My coworkers were, doing their thing. COVID really changed our dynamic of how we worked, and we used to have so many tellers on, but during COVID, we were working one teller and working the line. So when somebody would walk in, whoever wasn't on at that time would just kind of, see if I could assist them before they would get to a wicket. And so that's what I did whenever somebody walked in. So I was just busy doing paperwork when he walked in, and I knew right when he stood in the doorway that he wanted his presence to be known. So funny little bit of the whole story is I did hand him a mask because it's during COVID. He came in with none and I handed him one. So we always get a little chuckle out of that one.
Did he take it?
He did, and he put it on.
Oh my.
Yeah.
No, I can't even react to that because that's...
Yeah.
Not to segue away, from your story, but I know the one thing that we always joke about where I work is we're told all the time, never go into a bank with a mask on. Mm-hmm. And here we are, everybody's walking in with masks. And, we had a lot of conversations from a safety prevention side of things of how to navigate this.
Yep, absolutely. We even had some jokes were made, I guess you could say, that, we never were allowed to wear a mask into a bank, and now we're being told to. So this was at the tail end of COVID, really. Like, things had tapered off a little bit, so we weren't as strict with the masks. And even though I knew, I just got a sense, like I read people very well, so I just got a sense that, he wanted his presence to be known. Should I have gotten that close to give him a mask? Probably not. I do regret that because, other things could have happened.
But you were just doing your job.
That's right. And we're taught and trained not to assume or not to judge or anything. So, I gave him the benefit of the doubt that everybody needs to do their banking. So I told him to come over to my wicket. And I could read his body language. I knew something was off. So your question to whether our training kicks in, it absolutely does. I didn't sit down in our chair, which is training 101. I took control. So I stayed standing up, and that's when he passed me the note. I can't really remember every word for word, but basically it said, this is a robbery. I know that was the first words. This is a robbery. Give me all your 20s, 50s, 100s, and nobody will get hurt. You read that and it's like your body goes into, is this really happening? Am I really living in that moment right now? Like, this is something I've watched in movies, but am I really being robbed? And that's when he hauled out the gun. Like, he had a sweater on with this, like, the pouch in the front. So that's where he took out the crumbled piece of paper. And then that's where he kind of slid out the gun to show me that this is a serious robbery, not to play around. So training kicked in, and I was just like, I need to get him out as fast as possible. Like, do what you're told, keep everybody safe, and if you give him what he wants, hopefully you get to go home to your kids.
My question to that, did anybody around you realize that this was happening?
Nope, yeah. Not a single person.
And that's what I hear all the time when you hear about people who get robbed in a bank is if your training kicks in and you do exactly what they want, no one around you even knows that it's happening until it's done.
That's right. And that's the best case scenario.
That is the best case scenario.
Yeah, there was clients in there. There was 4 other staff members, and until I locked the door behind him, they had no clue what was happening.
That's amazing that you were able to stay calm, go through the motions, and yeah, so that's awesome.
I had to come off mute. I thought I was ready, but and I've even heard you talk about this before, and I'm just sitting here like you're describing a movie. And
Yep. It still doesn't feel like it really happened. It's not, everybody would say it's just Barrington. That will never happen. Especially when we did our training. You know, we're not a city.
yeah,
We are in a small town with one street light. Things like that just don't happen here. But I did have a very good manager who, I think it was like maybe in my first few weeks of, working on my own. And he would have a meeting every morning, and he came up to me and he's like, okay, if you were being robbed right now, what would you do? And I had to go through the motions of what I would do. And that was exactly what came back to my mind in that moment when I was being robbed. Okay, it's just, my manager telling me what to do exactly what you were supposed to do. Don't look at him, just remember as if it was your manager standing on the other side of the glass, and do your training.
So after this is all said and done, what does that do to your mental health, and what does that do to your relationship with Jesus? And please hear me when I say this, don't take this as the compliment as it is and not something else that I'm trying to say. But in that moment, if that place needed to be robbed, it sounds like it was the right person. Does that make sense? Because you kept your head level, and you made sure everybody stayed safe.
That could have went a lot. That could have went a lot worse. And I just want to kind of wrap my own head around it. So, the event at the wicket happened. You obviously did what he asked, and then you escorted him out, or
he just took the money and basically ran out. But our training is that we lock the door behind them. It's just what we do. And then that's when I said to everybody, I said, I was just robbed. And they couldn't believe it. They were like, what? Like, we were standing like literally not even 4 feet away, and they had no idea. And so everybody was really shook up, and I don't think they believed me at first. I don't know. They were like, are you joking? Like, no, I'm not joking. So then we had to call 911 and everything else, that unfolded after that. It was overwhelming. It was just, your training kicks in and your adrenaline kicks in and you get the job done. But when you start to come off of that adrenaline rush, it's scary. And then you go through the what ifs, like, I could have died.
yeah.
My kids might, they could have lost their parents. So it was, I struggled after that. I really did.
And in terms of your relationship with Jesus, did that do anything to it? Did it improve it? Did it affect it negatively?
No, I think the reason I decided to take charge was just, I never had confidence before my relationship with Jesus. I was very self-conscious and I doubted everything that I did. And once I had a relationship with Jesus, I'm more confident, and I know that I can give him all my cares and worries. And I think, well, that definitely, that moment, the robbery definitely made my relationship with Jesus 100% stronger. I even, right after I got off the phone with 911, I went upstairs and I messaged Jason, my pastor, and I was like, I was just robbed and I need some prayers. And I just knew to ask for prayers because I know the power of prayer. And I know that their heart is in the right place when they pray for somebody. And that I was probably going to struggle and I'd need a lot of people to lean on. So yeah, I went upstairs. I said my own prayer. I just had a little bit of quiet time because there was just so much going on downstairs with interviews and investigations and finding out who he was and everything else. So it was a lot, and I knew, thankfully, knew enough to just go spend a few minutes with God,
Yeah.
which I didn't tell anybody that's what I was doing up there, but that's what I needed. I just needed to
When
go calm
I
down.
think back to like my experience with worship, and maybe this is a better way of saying, I explain it as my anxiety decreases tremendously, but
Hmm.
there's something powerful about knowing the Almighty Creator's on your side, and when you truly
Yeah.
know what that looks like, and when you've experienced the wholeness of Jesus, um, it's extremely powerful to think, you know what, I'm going into something, but I've got the Almighty Creator, and He's on my team.
And he's on my side. That's exactly right.
So, first of all, thank you. Phenomenal story. I think all encompassing. Anybody that's dealing with, trauma, great loss. I mean, to be honest, any type of mental illness, this story just resonates. And I think it's so powerful that, obviously the fire changed things internally in terms of how you looked at Jesus, but to see you stay strong through the robbery and to immediately know, hey, that's where I need to turn, that's powerful. And I think, a lot of times it's easy as Christians to go through something like that and live the cliche that is, how can there be a God that would let something like this happen? So for you to maintain that strength and to build on that relationship, I think is extremely powerful and encouraging to anybody who's going through trauma to say, God has a plan and it's His timing, and you have to trust that. And I just want to thank you for telling your story. And to kind of close this out, what's your message for anybody? If they've lost everything in a fire, even gone through a bank robbery, what's your message? What do you want them to know?
Just that they're not alone, that there is a community out there, wherever they live, wherever they're from, there's a community out there that cares for you, and they don't even know you because they just want you to know Jesus. And yeah, I think my message would just be that there's freedom and there's peace in finding forgiveness in people that hurt you. I actually forgave the robber, and that my biggest wish is that he comes to know Jesus while he's in prison, because Jesus died for our sins, and punishing him is only punishing me. So, I spent a lot of time going to psychiatrists after that, and took 3 months off of work. I went to a CR program, which I would definitely recommend to anybody with loss, trauma, anything at all. Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah, we've had Dinger Dave on, who's quite involved or involved with that program. Tom, what's Dinger Dave's what's his sales pitch?
Celebrate Recovery is for anybody with hurts, habits, or hang-ups.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I've been to CR myself. That's where my Faith 180 starts, is sitting in a room full of other broken people, and just hearing that, you know what, Jesus will forgive me. God's going to forgive me. And I can either, wallow in my sorrows, or I can accept that and start to live a life for Him. So, yeah.
Hearing that you forgave this person must have been a tremendous weight taken off of you.
It was. After After I decided, I'm saying we, like me, my husband, whatever, my in-laws, we thought that it would be best that I would seek some counseling because I wasn't eating or sleeping, and it really ate me up. And they decided that I should get counseling, but I was also needing more than just counseling. So I started seeing Jason Parker, and he was giving me Christian counseling, which is the main reason I went so deep into scripture. And just every decision that I was making, I was trying to, like, well, what does scripture tell me to do? Like, why what he was telling me that I should forgive him, and that a biggest part of my journey would be to forgive the robber. And I was like, when he said that, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna ever forgive somebody that hurt me, that ripped away a part of my life. That, I was scared. I had a lot of fear. I walk on the beach every day, and that's my happy place. I love the beach. I see God's creation. I usually do most of my talking to Jesus on the beach. We've shared some pretty good moments on there, crying and everything. And a few weeks after the robbery, I kind of felt like I was just not wanting to leave anywhere. I didn't want to go grocery shopping, or I was just scared that no matter where I go, it can happen. It can happen anywhere. So I decided that maybe I should go for a walk on the beach, and I had a full-blown panic attack. And that's when I realized, like, I really need some bigger help. So reach out for help.
That is a huge part of Tom and I's story. It was with Dinger Dave, Pastor Dave, and again, just it wasn't so much for me Christian counseling, but just kind of the I still at that point had a lot of judgment about church staff and preconceived notions about what even speaking to him was going to be like. And hearing him open up and give his testimony publicly at CR is where I heard it, was just, it's like, we're all humans. We're all broken, like, let's just live in a community where we support and uplift each other. And that's been, it's been really powerful. And then to hear that, Jason was able to work with you. I don't know Jason that well, but when that man prays, the mountains start to shake. He's a man of God, and it's truly powerful to hear that, those conversations helped you.
One thing I can say that I was extremely lucky about, when I was forced help, I didn't necessarily seek help. The best way to say is I was forced help. But the therapist who I was seeing is actually a very strong believer. So I kind of got Christian counseling with her, as well as every other counseling as well. So I was very lucky in that regard.
I did actually look into Christian counselors. I did try one out. I will say that if you reach out for help and it doesn't feel like the right fit, it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Like, your personalities are not going to match up. I was going through a very traumatic event, so I knew that I needed something more. So I actually went to Bridgewater to see a psychiatrist who was trained in PTSD and really got me some deeper foundations for what I needed to get through the trauma. And then that's where Jason came in and, gave me the Christian part of it. So I needed two people. I needed a whole team.
Yeah.
But, if you reach out and it's not working, then there's others out there.
I had a psychiatrist that we weren't a match. And one thing I just want to mention quickly is, psychiatrists are phenomenal, and I think they serve a very important role. I wouldn't be where I am today without mine. That being said, the counseling aspect, the communication aspect, sometimes that lacks in traditional psychiatry because, at the end of the day, they're physicians and they study a certain thing, and conversations are not necessarily their strong suit. So in my instance, it was a combination of a psychiatrist, a physician, a counselor within the hospital system, and then finally Dave. But there's no shame in having people to help you improve your life.
And also just kind of adding on to the coincidence conversation that we've been having, Jordan, I'm just kind of realizing this now. The person who, like I said, my help and my therapy was forced upon me, and so wasn't my therapist. So for them to be someone who was also a believer, to have that conversation with me is they were put in my life for a purpose.
The funniest thing about all of this is God knew it the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question. So,
and I had Dave at the church as well.
So I know we all kind of say like lucky, 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 but he's up there just laughing at us.
Oh, he is. He is playing his little chess game with us,
But hey, he does know. And you know what? We keep saying coincidences, and me and Dave talk about this sometimes too, is like, they're not really coincidences because the man upstairs knew the whole time.
I had a comment on one of our videos on YouTube that said not coincidences, but God incidents. God incidents. I wouldn't even know how to pronounce it. So just to wrap up here tonight, Lyndsey, thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. And one thing that I kind of want to say here as well, when we first approached you, you were kind of a little apprehensive at first because you were like, I don't know if my story is kind of worth telling, but I can definitely tell you that it definitely is worth telling. So thank you for agreeing to come on, and thank you for sharing with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I still, I don't know why God has done all these things in my life, but I'm also, there's always a reason. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
We certainly don't know why he has us doing a podcast, but here we are. Here you are.
People are listening.
Well, okay, yes, obviously.
No, I'm saying it like, he has us doing a podcast and people are listening.
Oh,
that's right.
Blows my mind.
No, that's the part that I don't get it. I remember calling you and saying like, yeah, let's maybe start and do some chats, and here we are.
Here we are.
Well, Lyndsey, thank you very much. Feel free to jump off. And Tom and I are just going to wrap things up here on this episode of Faith 180. Well, everybody, that was Lyndsey, and wow,
yeah,
is really
hearing the story of her going through that bank robbery. Like, I work in a financial institution currently, and granted, I'm not people facing at the moment, but it's always in the back of your mind when you're dealing with people that, this could be the one. So
the thing that was like rolling through my mind was predominantly, and I know we say like it was like something out of a movie, but like in a weird way that was so realistic that like you don't see that in a movie. That's a robbery in a movie is a guy holds up a bank and
it's grandiose.
They fill bags with money. Like that was so real. And yeah, I know we thanked her a lot, but thank you, Lyndsey, for coming on and telling that story.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Faith 180. You know where to find us. We're available on all major podcast platforms. You can find us on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook, but we're all over the place.
Yeah. We are all over the place. You know what? I think we should go out on a bit of a lighter note. I will sing the jingle just because I know it's a fan favorite. But first, I thought we would do some ASMR.
I love ASMR.
What I have prepared for this installment is my mother-in-law sends me these phenomenal baked Ruffles chips, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And she lives down in the States. You can no longer buy them in stores here. It's disappointing. You used to get them at Subway all the time. Not a sponsor. And no, I don't. Would we let them sponsor us?
I don't know. We can eat fresh.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it. Anyway, back to the Ruffles. They're 65% less fat because they're baked, but the crinkle,
the foil bag,
the bag that these chips come in is just phenomenal, and I wanted to crinkle them. If
Jordan,
that's okay with you, Tom.
let me hear that crinkle.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so I muted and then I brought them close. Now, if you're driving, we recommend you turn your radio down, or you're going to immediately want baked Ruffles, and we will let them sponsor us. Faith 180, you take your faith and you turn it around. Faith 180, yeah.
ASMR.
Faith 180 is an independent podcast featuring, produced, and edited by Thomas Hazelton and Jordan Hamilton. Got a question, suggestion, or a story of your own Faith 180? Email faith180crew@gmail.com. Faith 180 is available everywhere you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a review and turn on notifications for when a new episode goes live. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are worthy of God's grace.